Hello, I have decided to make a relatively short tutorial on WPF. Specifically, I am going to speak about design IDEST XAML. Now let's create a WPF project. WPF stands for Windows Presentation Foundation. XAML stands for Extensible Application Markup Language. It is quite similar to HTML and XML because you will see angle brackets, tags, attributes, and nesting. Even comments are written the same way. After you create your project, by default you have one window created for you. Window consists of two parts: XAML, your interface, and CS, your code. When you work on your interface, you have two halves: Design and XAML. Ideally, you use Design to preview and XAML to make changes. You can have only one top-level element. In our case, we have a window. This window has attributes with values. Every element, including a window, can have events which are triggered in different situations. For example, a window has an event called loaded, which is fired when all visual elements are ready to be displayed. Since this tutorial is about XAML, not C#, we will not code much, so let's just show a message which says ready. As you see, the event fired and we saw a message. Let's comment this line not to see it every time. Window also can have only one element, which must be a container. You will mainly use a stack panel and a grid, and sometimes you will use a border. If you previously used Windows Forms, bad news for you. Ideally, you type your code and not use a toolbox. But don't worry, you will get used to it very quickly. Besides, you can preview UI changes when you type. You still can use the toolbox just to see what controls actually exist in WPF. If you are interested why you shouldn't use the toolbox, then it's because after you drag and drop them, they will appear in the wrong place in the structure of your window. Moreover, you will get attributes that you don't need. Let's get started by changing attributes. For example, let's change the height of the window. Now let's get back to a stack panel and a grid, which have different purposes. But I must say that I mainly use a stack panel when I am lazy and a grid when I try to make something decent. In a stack panel, elements stack one after one. A stack panel can have vertical or horizontal orientation. Elements will have an auto size, IDEST size just enough to fit the content. Sometimes I wouldn't recommend using stack panel at all. For example, if it has horizontal orientation and you add several buttons with different text, each of them will have a different width. If you need something more complex relative with columns and rows, you will use a grid which provides all of that. Unlike stack panel, grid occupies everything available. If you define no columns and rows, elements will be placed on top of each other. So let's define a few columns. Each column definition stands for one column. Controls are defined after column definitions. To place an element into a certain column, you should set attribute gridColumn to a 0-based index. If you want to select a square, just hold the Alt key. Now let's look at any program to see some rows in it. For example, in Notepad we see just 3 rows. Let us define 3 rows too, instead of columns, and change their attributes as well. Remember, I told that HTML and XAML were very alike. Specifically, I mentioned nesting. Well, you can nest one container inside another. And as far as I know, nesting has no limits in degree. You can toggle every logical block in XAML by pressing a little button to the left. If a grid has multiple rows, you can put another stack panel or grid inside a row. Theoretically, we could set an equal width manually for each button, but we would need to repeat it every time. To make comments in XAML, you write left angle bracket, exclamation, 2 dashes, then goes your comment, then you close it with 2 dashes and a right angle bracket. In Grid, you can define columns and rows at the same time. A very useful feature in XAML is a star, which means take all available space. In other words, all space except for the space used by other columns will be given to a star column. In other words, all space except for the space used by other columns will be given to a star column. Moreover, you can give a star to multiple columns, which will evenly divide the space. You can type a number before a star to multiply space for a star column. For example, 2 star means that this column gets 2 times more space than other stars. Let's launch the program. As you see, all sizes are relative when we change the window size. There are a couple of ways to make some space before the window frame. You can set margin on your grid, or you can wrap everything in another container, such as border. By default, it's invisible. After that, you can set padding. Padding extends the control, while margin creates space around the control. A window control can contain only one container, border, which also can contain one element, in this case grid. If you type only one number in padding, the border will extend in all directions. If you set 2 numbers, the first extends left and right, while the second top and bottom. To control all 4 directions, you need to type all 4 numbers: left, top, right and bottom. To make some space between columns, we will set margin for specific controls. If you need non-interactive text, use text block. Remember that it uses text attribute instead of content. Text can be bold, italic, underlined, and crossed. To make it bold, type font weight equals bold. If a tag occupies just one line, you can avoid the closing tag typing slash before the right angle bracket. To align text vertically in the center, set vertical alignment to center. In Visual Studio, you can copy the current line if text is not selected. You should remember that this way you copy not logically, but really just the line. A control for typing text is text box. Its text is set in the text attribute. You can enable and disable controls by changing the isEnabled attribute. Textbox has an event called TextChanged, which fires whenever the text is changed. To access controls from code, you need to give them names. A good example to show you difference between the margin and padding is a text box. Margin creates space around, that's all. Padding extends the control. To prevent typing in a text box, set the attribute isReadOnly to true. Visually, there is no difference by default, so let's change the background to light gray. You can use either preset colors or hex colors. Hex consists of a hash character and 6 letters or numbers. Letter F means 100%, 0 means 0%. So it's FEDCBA 98765432110. If all letters or numbers are the same, you can shorten the hex to 3 characters. Another widely used control is a checkbox. Its text is set in content. You are interested in 2 of its events: checked and unchecked. You can actually reuse your events for other controls. Next, let's look at Combo Box, which allows choosing from multiple items. It is filled by Combo Box items. You can preview them when your cursor is on one of them. To make any item selected, you have two ways: change the attribute is selected of a combo box item, or set selected index of a combo box. Some events can take the same handler. Let's briefly return to our checkbox. For example, unchecked can be set to checked. To quickly access your code, press View Code in your Solution Explorer. Now let's repeat. You can access controls from code if you give them names. Window is unique though. You actually access it all the time. The full reference to it is this. You can also set the name by typing x:name. X is your namespace defined in the top of XAML. Button has the event click, which occurs when it is pressed. Now let me show you that making interface in XAML does not actually take up much time. Let's look at Notepad. It has just 3 rows. I hope it helped you understand the basics of XAML.